As you may know, Generation Connect is the overarching ITU youth strategy. And to start, I'll say that we know artificial intelligence is going to impact every single one of us, which means we all have a right to be in the rooms where this technology is being shaped and where it's being coded, regardless of your background in technology. And how we march towards a future that we want is by imagining it, which means we have to insert ourselves in the room where these futures are being coded. You have a role to play, regardless of what your background is, in shaping how this technology evolves. So it's an exciting time. It's not too late. We are just at the beginning of this technology, and how we insert ourselves in these conversations can play a big role in the future that we end up living in. So to kick things off, I'm going to give it to an opening address for Marco Obiso, the head of Cybersecurity Division and Chief of the Digital Network Society Department.
All right, thank you. And good morning, afternoon, I don't know, we are in the middle to everyone. I guess there would be lunch, so you eat after the session, please. Just kidding, you can eat whenever you want. So, well, I mean, again, as you mentioned, the idea here is to really have a dialogue, to really have a little bit of an interaction, which is called intergenerational, because there is, let's say, one piece of the population that is older like me, and a big piece of the population that is representing the youth. And here we have a little bit of an issue in terms of connectivity and in terms of how technology in general can be made available and can really be 100% exploited. Now, ITU institutionally is an agency within the UN that is dealing with bridging the digital divide. Historically, we have been working a lot in that direction, but as you see here, we also want to start, let's say, seeing how emergent technology, how artificial intelligence can really have a positive impact. This is linked to what I was saying before in terms of connectivity. Why? Because we have a big gap in terms of connectivity, specifically for youth in the world. The gap is between developed and developing countries, but also in terms of age, in terms of, let's say, age range. 75% of youth 15, 24 years old are connected compared to the 55, generally speaking. But if you see, for example, in the African continent, you have something like, almost a half of youth that is connected compared to the developed world. So for sure, we need to deal with the issues of connectivity. We need to make sure that we can, let's say, enable access. But then on top of that, which is purely infrastructure issues, we need to have an understanding of how AI, specifically, since we are talking about youth and AI here, can be beneficial for the youth. And here we have, just you think of whatever you can, and then I'm sure that AI can address in a way or another. Digital skills, job opportunities, anything that you can think of. So the idea here is to try to instigate a little bit of a dialogue, facilitated by a nice moderator here, and see how we can come out with an understanding of how we can solve this. I was talking about job opportunities. For sure, it is foreseen that like 80% almost, more or less, between this period, like 2023, 2028, will be a complete different jobs. It means that there will be, we are already experiencing a transformation in terms of typology jobs, in terms of skills that are needed to do certain jobs. And of course, AI is kicked in, removing some of the traditional jobs, but also creating new opportunities for others. Now, we need to understand how, let's say, the young generation can benefit from that. So that is more or less the idea of this nice interaction here. So I just stop, and then I let the flow carrying on. And thanks a lot for everything, and thanks a lot for being here. And give the floor back to you. Thank you. Thank you.
And there was a global youth survey, and the responses were quite promising. On the one hand, young people do see all of the opportunities that AI could present, and on the other hand, young people are also very open to regulation. And so I think it is that unique intersection point between innovation and safeguarding that allows us to build something that works for everyone, something that inspires innovation but also keeps us safe. So with that, we are going to kick off the official dialogue. with our wonderful intergenerational panel. And to start, we'll start with Karishma. In your view, what do youth currently think of AI, and what is the role of youth in shaping artificial intelligence?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So, when you think of AI, I would say that, it's mostly the Terminator or the Transformers or Iron Man. And I think that the line between science fiction and fiction is definitely blurring in that sense. And so the UNICEF actually had a survey, and there were two takeaways on kind of the youth perceptions of AI. And one of them is that youth believe that decisions surrounding AI are increasingly adult-centric, meaning that youth believe that, AI is kind of meant, decisions are surrounding adults, and it's kind of meant for the adults to kind of decide. And so I think that there is definitely a need to kind of change that perception to bring youth more into the space, and there is definitely a need for youth to really be involved here. The second perception that was taken away is that youth learn about AI from their peers and from their homes, and not from their schools. And so I think that's very interesting. That's an interesting point, interesting perception. And it also calls for a need for formal curriculum in the schools, and to be able to integrate AI into the educational environment and to have that dialogue even within a school environment. And there are benefits to that. So whether that is reverse mentorship, where a younger colleague is able to mentor an older colleague, or just the idea of being completely open-minded. I think that's really a benefit of being youth and of being young. And so I think that the youth are definitely the future, and that's really the next step forward.
Great, and I think that point about young people not really learning about AI in school really struck a chord for all of us. If we want people to be able to use AI safely, they need to be able to learn about it in rooms where it's safe and where the information is accurate. So for our next question, we'll go to Francois. In the next decade, how do you think AI will change youth experiences and outcomes across the world?
Great question. Next decade is a long time. I would say next 10 months is already hard to see. 10 months ago, we weren't talking about ChatGPT. Now we can't stop talking about it. So we have to look at different timescales. In academia, I represent the generation of old professors some of whom are not very happy about this because, oh my goodness, this could lead to new forms of cheating or problems around, tracking how people are learning. But I would say in the meetings we're having now, and this sort of emergency meetings in universities like my own, University of Geneva, to figure out what to do next academic year with all these new challenges, there are very positive voices and also negative ones. And the positive ones are, we have to keep up. In fact, we should be using ChatGPT every day just to understand what the young people are doing. So that's on a 10-month scale. I think we'll see universities making statements. It's already happening in the UK about how they're going to handle AI. On a 10-year scale, I see a huge opportunity for UNESCO, if we're talking now about the UN and its role here, for UNESCO to really play a role in figuring out how does AI fit into curricula at every level of education. And I think here it's worth saying, and when we talk about intergenerational, to think about past generations. 100 years ago, almost exactly, in this city, one of my prior colleagues, Jean Piaget, a professor at the university, thought it was time to create an International Bureau of Education, first of its kind, multilateral organization for education, and in a sense, the ancestor of UNESCO. He did that because it was just after the First World War, just after the Spanish flu. The world had just been through a huge amount of crises, and he thought, education is the way to avoid that we go back into a world war, that we would solve health problems and so on. Very idealistic. And Piaget inspired us to run a hackathon on this topic. And later on, you'll see some results from this hackathon. I believe that if you were alive today, this kind of thinker would definitely want young people to be working out what they can do with AI to improve education opportunities.
Thank you. Okay, great. And our next question is for Pratyush, who is a master's student in computer science at the University of Stanford. So how can youth leverage the potential of AI and play a role in AI policymaking or regulation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I'll try to answer that from the perspective of youth and, well, as the perspective of a teenager. And, well, when I like to think about this, I want to think about the past because I think the past gives us the best predictor into the future. So if we take a look at the earlier generations often lived in an analog world, and currently we live in a digital world. And so in the future generation will live, and our generation will live in an AI world. So I believe when we look at the future, which is still very uncertain, you probably have all very familiar with the recent letter, the AI moratorium, that was signed by Elon Musk. A lot of people are proponents of that, and there are also a lot of influential figures like Andrew Ng who are dissidents or disagree with that. So I think the space of where the future of AI and how it should be regulated or governed is still very unclear. But I think there's two things that we can learn from this, and two things that are very evident. And one is that AI will play a large role in the future of regulation and policy making. For example, there's recent research in AI that uses machine learning or deep learning to scrape through or parse through large amounts of constituent data to figure out where the best areas for policy reform might be. And then the other is, the converse is also true, that is that policy making will ensure the successful or the acceleration of AI. That is, in terms of recent regulation proposed by the European Commission's recent regulation on AI seeks to identify these potential risks and safeguard human rights. So I think as youth, we're in a very unique and powerful position since we'll essentially be dictating the life and the world in this increasingly AI interconnected world that we'll be living in for the rest of our lives.
Thank you, and I loved that description. Analog world, we're in a digital world, and in the future will be an AI-based world. And our next question will be asked to two individuals. So we have Valerie, who is a Generation Connect Africa Youth Envoy, and then we have Jennifer, who is a Generation Connect Youth Envoy. Okay, so this question, in your local community, how do you think AI is or will be of value or risk to fellow young people?
Thank you very much for the question. And for context, I come from Kenya, which is the eastern part of Africa, and that is a developing country. I think it's important to know the context so that I can talk about the lived realities of the challenges that young people face. And this being an AI for Good Summit, I'm only going to talk about the benefits that AI has on young people. So I'm going to talk about two key areas, which is health and well-being, as well as employment and the future of work. So talking about health and well-being, which is SDG 3, the reality in Kenya is that there's a lot of cultural taboos around menstruation, a lot of stigmatization. It is something that is talked on harsh tones. And because of that, you get that most young women are not able to get access to menstrual health services or menstrual health information. When you go to the hospital, for example, and you have a problem, maybe a menstrual-related problem, you may not get assistance because they don't think it's a disease or it's a problem. So how AI can come in this instance, there's an app called Grace Health, and it's like a chatbot, and it was developed in Kenya, and it works on Facebook and WhatsApp, and essentially what that does is that it provides information on menstrual health, pre-menstrual health symptoms, and post-menstrual health symptoms. And so what this does is that the young women feel safe to ask for help in the chatbot because there is no stigmatization and there is no bias. Also, another aspect of health is mental health, which is a very big issue. There is a statistic by, I think, Focus Psychiatria, and it says that 1 in 7 young people face psychological problems, and most of them actually need to be diagnosed, like medically. And also, still going back to cultural taboos, many traditions don't think that mental mental health is a problem. I mean, we have cancer, we have diabetes. What do you mean you're depressed? How can you be depressed? You're maybe lazy. So you get that it's really hard for young people, especially, to reach out and get help. And there's also an AI-related solution that was created. I think I just forgot the name. And essentially what it does is that it's like your bot therapist, and you can share your problems with them, and it can help you like walk through challenges to help with mental health, and it also provides information on where you can get mental health services. When it comes to the future of work and employment, unemployment is a very big problem in Kenya, and there's also statistics for that. More than 480 million people in Africa do not have jobs. And so I know this is maybe a minority kind of point of view, but I am from the point of view that AI is actually going to provide so many jobs. And so this can actually solve unemployment, because artificial intelligence cannot work without people behind it. We need AI lawyers, we need tech lawyers, we need data analysts, we need data operators. There's so many jobs that are going to be created, which are going to be better than these jobs that are actually going to be automated by AI. You get that these jobs have better pay, they have better working conditions, they are remote. So someone in Kenya can work for a company in the US, you can take up 3 jobs, and so it actually solves poverty and unemployment. So I think artificial intelligence is actually a positive thing for young people in Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer. I'm from Mexico City. So I'm going to talk about the experience of Mexico City, that is the most development and connected city in my country. So the experience is very different in each city. So AI in Mexico City, it's focused in universities, but only in private universities. So in Mexico City, there's a huge gap in education and digital access. So we cannot talk about AI for all because we are still unconnected. It's like 3 out of 10 families don't have access to internet. So it's very centralized and very kind of privileged, the access to AI. So luckily, I'm in a private school in Mexico City and a private university. So for us, the use we have for AI is for education. But there's happening something interesting that we are not probably using that good AI, because we are taking advantage of the inexistent knowledge of our professors and the inexistent norms. So now some universities start making kind of like workshops where obviously there's only I'm sorry for the word, but adults. We are not speaking about our needs, because AI can be a very useful tool for education, because that's what we are using it for. Maybe not that ethically, but we're using it as a tool. So I feel like we need to be in those workshops and kind of norms creating tables, because they are not trying to understand the needs we have. And yeah, can be a tool we can use in university, but I cannot say that it's a reality for all country and our schools, all schools, not all young people. So I would like to encourage all decision makers here to promote regulation, but not only AI regulation, just connectivity in general regulation. Because AI is not going to be a reality, never, if we are not connected. So we need to be connected, because this needs to be equal. Because Mexico is a very diverse country, and I'm so happy for that. But we need to recognize the differences, and I can help. because education needs AI, but it will never, ever, ever going to be a reality if we don't have almost electricity. So please regulate, but invite young people, because you need us. So yeah, thank you.
And I hope you could hear from our youth envoys that for many people who get to interact and have fun with a system like ChatGPT and use it to generate random answers, we need to also recognize the seriousness of AI, and it's being used as a pathway for economic prosperity, a pathway towards equality in healthcare. So it is really serious that we build these technologies safely and correctly, and that everybody gets access to them. So our next question is for Amjad Almari, who is a mechanical engineer and a senior specialist at NEOM. And your question, how can AI be a tool for socioeconomic development of youth?
Thank you so much. I think my answer today will be building on what Jennifer has stated when she said education needs AI. I think AI has revolutionized and transformed the way how we approach socioeconomic development for youth. With the rapid advances that we witness today in terms of AI technologies, we can see that AI has access or enabled us to have an access and to a huge number, an incredible amount of data and computational power. And this will enable us to develop more sophisticated tools and models that can understand complex social and economic development. So one of the key ways in which AI is revolutionizing the socioeconomic development in youth is that through the understanding and its ability to send or provide accurate and more targeted data to the specific to the needs of the youth and young people in general. So I think this analysis happens by gathering data through AI and analyzing data such as educational attainment, employment rates, to also health outcomes and social network. All of these data can help predicting the needs for young people in general. And this analysis uses AI to analyze patterns and trends that otherwise would not be able to be analyzed or detected without the use of AI. So I think in turn, this can help policymakers and educators and social workers to develop more efficient programs, educational programs and interventions that helps meeting the needs, the specific needs for the young people in their communities. Also, I would like to add that AI is playing a key role in an increasingly important role in expanding access to education and training opportunities for young people. We see today we have the rise of online learning and AI adaptive learning platforms powered by AI. So this will provide access to students to have a personalized instruction and feedbacks that are more specific to their needs. This is really important for students who are struggling and facing barriers with the traditional teaching methods in classrooms. So this will increase the educational outcomes we have, and it will also address all the needs from all the students. Overall, I think the potential of AI and it will I think AI will have a potential to transform the socioeconomic development. The potential is immense. And of course, there are certainly some risks and challenges will be associated in using the AI in such a context. However, I strongly believe, and I'm very optimistic that we can find ways that harness the power of using AI to create more bright future and for all young people from all around the world. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'm glad you brought up data, because we know that AI is only as good as the data that powers it. So I think data and AI often have to go hand in hand as a conversation. So our next speaker will be Anka Raoul, who is a computer science PhD student at Stanford. So to what extent can AI contribute to solving real-world problems in diverse industries?
So that's a super large question, and you could literally organize a conference on all the good that AI can do for us. And I'm so glad to have all of you here to figure exactly that out. I think the three areas that I'm most excited about are agriculture, healthcare, and education, as was mentioned before, because that's where we can literally solve one of the most pressing issues we see in our societies globally today. We can make progress towards ending hunger, towards providing access to quality healthcare and education to currently underserved communities. And to give you a very personal example, I spent most of my formative years in a children's home, which are notoriously under-resourced both in terms of personnel and finances, and there was no room for me to receive any personal learning support or anything. At the same time, I came from a very disadvantaged background, so I came in with a lot of learning gaps. And to me, schooling felt like this very lone war that I'm fighting, because obviously I wanted to learn and I wanted to improve, but at the same time, there was no real support. And I think that's where AI can really make a difference. Would I have had a very personalized learning support back then that would have gauged my pre-existing knowledge, my learning style, as well as the difficulties that I'm having, and created a very personalized learning plan, I would have had a lot less struggles in school, and I would have appreciated that. At the same time, we need to think about, at the same time, to really capitalize on those benefits of the technology, there's, in my opinion, two things we need to put in place. Number one, we need a very global, coordinated approach to guardrails around the technology, because as much as potential the technology has, as much risk does it have. And we need to ensure that the technology itself is safe to use and basically have minimum, technically informed minimum safety standards that are enforced globally. And then the second thing we need to educate individuals around what are the risks of the technology, what can the technology do, and what can't it do. That means avoiding over-reliance on the technology and making very educated, what's the word there? Guesses is wrong. But educated guesses around when can we actually use the technology responsibly, and when can I rely on it, and when can't I rely on it. And we need to teach people how to actually collaborate with machines and both with software-based AI technologies as well as robot-based technologies. And I think once we make progress on both of those ends, we can capitalize on the technology, and I'm so excited to see how much it can progress us as humanity.
Great, thank you. And I think what really stood out is, one, AI isn't built in a vacuum. It's going to require a global conversation if we want to get it right. And two, AI isn't always a magical solution for everything. So knowing when we should apply it and when we shouldn't are equally as valuable. And so our final question is for Siddhartha Jha, an AI and digital innovations lead at Foundation Botnar. And your question: what are some practical applications of AI solving or exacerbating inequality issues for historically marginalized communities and vulnerable people?
Thank you for that question. And I would connect it to what you said earlier, the beginning, that it's extremely important for everyone to be involved in this debate. And let me take a step back and frame the opportunity that we have here with AI. It's really about humanizing engagements. It's freeing up our time to be more human. And it's about augmenting the human capability, our capability, to address problems. And if you take that together, then it also allows us as a global community to meet everyone where they are, which means, it creates that space for inclusion. So at Foundation Botnar, we look at AI and digital technology with a design and equity lens. What does it mean in this, when we are talking about marginalized communities or young people with accessibility challenges? We need to design AI solutions with them so that it speaks to their needs. And we have very interesting examples where if AI designed with users can actually solve a lot of equity challenges. The collaboration between OpenAI and a Scandinavian company, Be My Eyes, for example, lets a blind person borrow eyes for a few seconds to solve their immediate problem. That's a huge, empowerment, and AI can come in and be the eyes. We also see, we have heard from our co-panelists, Amjad and Anka, about education, personalized education. Especially that means a lot for people with accessibility challenges. We have the opportunity of having AI tutors which can have infinite patience to spend as much time as needed with people with challenges or learning difficulties till they progress to the next level. So let's capitalize on this opportunity and reimagine our education system so that it serves all and not just an average where there's no time for outliers. One of the low-hanging fruits in the space of inclusive design of AI solutions is supporting groups that work with marginalized communities, with people with accessibility challenges, with internally displaced communities, refugees, by freeing up their time to be more human and be more available to solve the real problems. So principles of design and language justice, they're extremely important to take inspiration from while designing applications for vulnerable communities. One of the important equity issues that I'd like to especially emphasize, and I know our colleagues have spoken earlier about a digital divide, but if you look at the current advancements in AI, what's happening is, we need to look at language as infrastructure. And, we are building services on top of language. And we have to solve the problems of connectivity, of electricity, but we also have to ensure that languages are equally represented. Is ChatGPT equally good in Bahasa as Indonesia as in English, for example? Because we are going to build health education services on top of this. And there are fantastic examples of AI helping us advance on that issue as well. And again, the collaboration between OpenAI and Iceland on preserving Icelandic language it's an inspiration. Or the work in India on Bhashini, a platform where all the languages, you create resources. So we need to invest in language corpus for all languages. We need to treat linguistic diversity the same way as biodiversity a little bit. We need to preserve that. We need to ensure that they are represented in the current AI discourse that we are having so that we can build technologies and solutions on top of these for all groups across the world and in the language that they speak. I remember from my school times, all the interesting books used to be available in English. And that, already I was able to read and engage with that, but that excluded a large population who couldn't speak that language. Now is the opportunity to, leverage what we have to ensure that we have inclusive education, that we engage humanly with all groups, we meet people where they are, and let's capitalize on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, that concludes our panel's dialogue. We want to open the floor to everyone here for questions. So if you do have a question, just raise your hand and we'll bring you a mic. Okay, great. So I saw the black shirt over here.
Yeah, hi. First of all, thanks everyone, all the speakers who gave their time. I guess time is the precious thing what we give to the humanity. So all the answers which I hear is something literally to AI for global good. So all it is respected that we are very much positive to this AI for global. But in my mind, it still think that AI can, leads to a very false storyteller. It can become very false storyteller, and we believe more on stories rather than facts. So any one of you can, give something short on this, a few points, how exactly we can control that AI or maybe control artificial general intelligence. Thank you.
And just to clarify, when you say AI can be a false storyteller, are you talking about misinformation and disinformation?
Yeah, misinformation. If I say, I don't know, the last month there is a misinformation related to some burning of the pigs and everything related to that. So it leads to really a disaster as well. So how exactly any of you related to regulations, how exactly we are doing into that part, or it can be maintained or not into that future part?
So, nope. Is that on? Yeah, perfect. So when we're talking about misinformation and yes. When we're talking about misinformation, you're absolutely right. That's one of the big risks we're facing with the technology. And in my opinion, there's two different solution approaches to it. Number one is what I've hinted at in my previous answer, is that we need to educate every single person to really be mindful and very aware of like the technology's limitations and like what it can be used and misused for, and be very critical about any information that we're receiving and processing. At the same time, and that's kind of like the second part to the answer, is there's obviously like work being done on technical solutions. And there's basically three like different buckets specifically towards targeting misinformation. Number one is watermarking. Watermarking, on the one hand side, AI-generated content, but at the same time, giving authors the chance, or like photographers, artists, media creators, the chance to watermark authentic content. That's kind of like bucket one. Bucket two is creating detection tools that can basically show, okay, which content has been AI generated and which hasn't. And then the third part to the answer is automated fact checking. So basically really having automated solutions that can at large scale check, is what we're being presented misinformation or not. And I think we need to look at a very comprehensive solution to this very complex problem, but at the same time, I think we're making promising progress towards it.
Great, thank you. And I think we'll go quickly. So I saw the orange shirt over here.
Yes, you mentioned AI to reform education. Since schools were invented 5,000 years ago, there were dozens of attempts to reform schools, and they all failed in face of the resistance of the most obscurantist, conservative social professional group, I mean educators. So how are you going to fix it this time?
Professor? We're going to call on a professor.
Yeah. Thanks, Boris. Thank you. Boris worked with Jean Piaget, and I discovered that in the hackathon that you'll be hearing about. And he is a professional disturber of discussions like this. Thank you, Boris, for this comment. Yes, I think it is a big challenge. That was what I was getting at more diplomatically, is our institutions are struggling internally now with how to handle this situation. And coming back to the issue of that was raised before, the problem with misinformation is we humans have been spreading it for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and having to filter it. So what we learn with or without AI in good education systems is how to judge critically information you're given and have doubts when you're not sure. Finally, that's the scientific method. Nothing that AI adds to this is really new.
Great. And just to add one more thing, we have reformed education. There was a time that we didn't have calculators, and then we adapted education to that. In fact, math got a lot harder when we introduced the calculator. So if you look at artificial intelligence in that way, as a tool that transforms what we teach, I think we do have some infrastructure for modernization. Okay, another question. Perfect. The green? Or great.
Didn't see you there. Hello. First and foremost, thank you so much also for the optimism, because I found this very contagious. And if you walk the rooms here internationally and talk about AI, everything is grim. And thank you. It's really great. But data was mentioned one time, and I thank for that, because I wanted to raise my question in this regard. Because one thing that we don't know was mentioned is where AI will lead us. We have no clue. 10 months, 15 months, 10 years, no idea. What we know, however, is that there are silos right now when it comes to regulation in regards to data governance. How to unlock that data so that these models are informed in an unbiased way. And I'm wondering about whether or not you have any examples of your data voyage, your experiences in this regard, and if you feel that you're empowered, that the AI that you'd be using in the future actually uses data that was accessible, that was fairly developed, and that might not have been just trained on English language, that might have been synthesized to learn another language, which is a new thing I learned, which blew my mind. But anyways, so just again, the nexus data and AI, just to throw this out there, there's still an influencing opportunity here, and I'm wondering about how you have seen that in your individual experiences.
So obviously, as you mentioned, like data is a big part of AI and like training models, and that's also where the biggest pitfalls are, quite frankly. Especially because current models are being trained on very large, uncurated data sets that are not checked for anything, and we don't know what's in there because we are missing regulation around transparency, what data goes in there. And again, two-part solution. Number one is changing that. We need regulation around which data can be used and which can't be used. And we need to put more resources towards curating data sets more broadly, so to ensure that they are representative and unbiased. And then something that I'm personally working on, or like a group at Stanford is working on more broadly, is what we call attribution in large language models. So what we try to do is we look at the output of a large language model. So basically what you get when you ask ChatGPT anything and then the text it provides afterwards. We basically try to figure out which points in the data set cause that output. And if we see that the output is problematic for one reason or another, we can go back to the training data and then basically erase those data points from the data set itself. So it's like kind of like a pre and post solution to the problem. I would like to see more of the former, because it also shows a very responsible development and deployment of the technology and like responsibility by the companies. But I'm afraid that we still have a long way to go, and there's not enough attention right now on the regulatory side on data governance.
Yeah, so just to add to that, so I'm a lawyer by profession, and when you talk about regulation, I just get like tingles. So law is what governs everything, and we all know that there's a huge lacuna when it comes to the regulation of artificial intelligence and especially data. So my solution will be this. We need to have a collaboration between tech people and legal people, because I know a lot about company law. I know about the legal stuff, and the tech people know about like data banks, big data, and all of that. So we need to have an education system that marries the two in such a way that lawyers and tech people can work together to come up with data policies and acts and laws that can provide solutions that actually work. Because, you know, the thing is that, like, for example, in Kenya, 2 years ago, we enacted the Data Protection Act that seeks to improve how data is used, especially in the online space. But the thing is that the law sounds fancy, just like you said, that, you know, we are all optimistic, yay, but does that really work? When you want to enforce that law, does it really work? So it's really important for us to have interdisciplinary connections to ensure that these laws actually work. Thank you.
And with that said, we're going to take a short little segue into the winners of our hackathon at Generation Connect. So we're going to play 3 quick videos. I'm not sure who's able to cue those up for us.
In 1925, Jean Piaget, a pioneer of child development psychology, established the International Bureau of Education in Geneva, the origin of UNESCO. His vision was to achieve a more peaceful world through better education. He believed in learning by innovating, not just repeating what others know. This is the spirit of Hackathon Piaget, which had its second edition at the University of Geneva, ICT University in Yaoundé, and online around the world during June 23 and 24 of 2023. Together with UNESCO International Bureau of Education and ITU's Generation Connect, 3 teams under innovations from the hackathon were selected to inspire the participants of AI for Good.
The student don't have the opportunity to see this AI. So now education is great, technology is great, AI is good. Nous allons donc développer un chatbot vocal qui pourra donc aider le malvoyant sur plateformes, mais à pouvoir mieux suivre cette avancée technologique, à pouvoir également eux-mêmes utiliser cette intelligence artificielle. Donc, notre projet également vise à créer un chatbot vocal qui permettra donc à la personne malvoyante, to the blind person, to ask some questions to the platform. Then the chatbot va maintenant guider le malvoyant sur la plateforme éducative. Donc, genre, par exemple, il y a le professeur qui envoie par exemple le cours d'histoire, de géographie, d'algorithme et bien d'autres. Le chatbot sera en mesure de pouvoir assembler l'ensemble de ces cours de manière explicative, qui pourra permettre également aux malvoyants de pouvoir comprendre les cours qui s'effectuent.
Thing we thought about was that in a lot of schools, especially in Africa, you don't always have internet access. And so how do you access the chatbot if you don't have internet access, right? So we started to think about having a model installed locally. And so we heard about a project called Biki, which is kind of a small server in a box that already has classes, exercise, and so on installed on it, and that can share those resources to the students in the class. And so we thought it would be interesting to add a chatbot into that existing environment and to train the chatbot on the exercises, the class, and so on, so that it knows what the students are learning, to train it to know more about each of the students, what they're good at, what they're not so good at, if they have disability, for example, so that when they're given exercises in class, the chatbot can adapt those exercises for each student.
And we are organizing a MUN, that's the Model United Nations debate, on a topic that is likely to have a profound impact on our society, which is, will ChatGPT replace teachers in the future? With the platform called Discourse and with SE, it's a 100% open source discussion platform. And to ensure a wide variety of perspectives and balanced discourse, we're trying to include representatives from a range of countries, some of which may have led the way in AI and technology use in education, while others may face considerable challenges in student-teacher ratio. And also, we may include some civil society representatives, such as the teacher union or student union. And as to the idea of prototyping the MUN debate on discourse, Noah just presented a brilliant idea of training ChatGPT to establish the procedure for MUN debates on discourse. It can be trained to establish all the procedure from the roll call to the open statements to the moderated and unmoderated caucuses. And this will not only streamline our debate process, but also provide a unique experience for all the team members. At least for me, it's rather innovative.
Great. Thank you. And we're going to quickly turn it over to Francois, who's going to say a few remarks on the videos. And then we're going to open it again for questions and comments. So if you have any, think about them now. And I'm going to throw you guys a question that's a little bit spicy after his comment. So go ahead.
Ooh, looking forward to that. Yeah, no, just briefly, I hope you caught that the winning team was from Yaoundé in Cameroon. Super creative ideas coming from places that are not sort of top universities in the global north. I think we have to do much more with the help of Generation Connect to make these connections, because brilliant minds can happen anywhere. For the second project, and I see one of the authors is in the audience, you know, Biki is actually a spin-off of the University of Geneva. It's being used in Africa. So you can get somewhere without internet connections if you're smart. and if you had some low-cost open source technology. And finally, I totally agree about governance issues that keep coming up. But there's another issue related to governance that is maybe just as important, that is ensuring there is public deliberation at a large scale about these technologies. We cannot wait for the high and mighty to decide what the laws should be. We need to be in the debate, all of us, any age, every generation. And the idea of modern United Nations, which is a global phenomenon where young people debate things, taking this on as a challenge is really exciting, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. And so my question or comment is for everyone, but especially young people. Over the past 6 to 8 months, we've started to hear about these open letters being signed, about things like extinction risk, and all these kind of alarm bells about AI. As a young person, do you find those types of call-outs inspiring and helpful, or do you find them discouraging? And make you feel like things are more helpless? Like, would you prefer to keep hearing those from leaders or people building technology, or would you not? Or would you prefer to it be phrased in different ways? Sure. Do you want to give it the green? Is it me? Oh. Give it a try.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I might not be able to answer your question directly. My name is Nashilongo and I'm from Namibia. I think what we know is AI is being portrayed as something that is negative, taking people's jobs, and that is what is losing the public interest in this new emerging technology altogether. And that perspective needs to shift, or need to change. What was being addressed earlier in here, I mean, just that background, the 50 years experience, or the 50 years experience in the field, and the many work that has been done, whether it's in machine learning, that constantly needs to be coming up in the messaging.